This is the worst running advice you could ever receive. Are you struggling to improve your running performance? Have you fallen prey to some of the misconceptions and myth-truths that are bandied around the running community? Today we're running into some of the worst training advice that could be sabotaging your progress. In this video, we'll debunk those myths with expert advice so that you can optimize your training and reach your full potential. From the dangers of high-intensity training to the pressures of social media and the truth behind recovery, this discussion will reshape the way you approach your running.
If you enjoy a couple of glasses of wine or 1 or 2 beers every night, you might feel that that is okay. You're not necessarily hungover or particularly tired the next day, but if you do that for an extended period of time, there is still going to be some damage to your liver. In the same way, this brings us to point number 1, in that running too hard, while it may not feel like it's really making a big impact or that it's really hurting you or you're stiff and sore the next day, but if you do that continually over time, you will land up being overtrained and perhaps burnt out or even worse, injured. And the reason for that is this. When we run, we have different muscle contractions. We have concentric contractions, so that's where the muscle fibers pull over each other, the muscle shortens, and we have eccentric contractions where the muscle fibers pull apart. And you can see that that is a little bit, I'm not weaker, but there's a lot more damage that can be done in that point. Every time we push off the ground, our muscle fibers come together and it's nice and strong, and you can see that that is less damage being done. But every single time you land, every single time your foot hits the ground, that is where your muscle fibers are working eccentrically, and that is where most of the damage happens. The faster you run, the more of those contractions happen and the more eccentric damage occurs. And as a result, you will feel stiffer and sore. And so this is why we suggest that you don't run hard all the time, because you're going to get a lot of those muscle contractions. That's a lot of beers and wine every night that accumulates into a lot of damage. Rather, make your runs slightly easier. You will still get the exact same benefit physiologically from an aerobic point of view, but with less harm and damage and cost to your body.
People are often telling you to copy what elite athletes are doing, or you might follow some elite athletes on Strava and social media. So what do? We often try and emulate what they're doing. The problem with that is you are putting yourself at a much higher risk of injury and potential illness purely because you don't necessarily have the same capabilities or even genetics that they do. The same as following social training platforms, things like Strava. You often find that you are chasing kudos and segments instead of actually training for where you are right now and your ability. This is often our ego that now goes out chasing segments or chasing particular mileage rather than thinking smart and training smart for proper gains and fitness. Smart training is not flashy. Most of the time, doing a boring exercise over and over again is what's actually going to get you fitter and stronger. I would much rather you consistently do boring exercises than try and do one flashy exercise that you may have seen on social media to try and keep up with the Joneses.
The third piece of horrible advice is probably instilled in us from our school days, maybe from modern life and just how busy we are all the time. We feel like we really have to maximize our time. I'm not 100% sure where it comes from, but no pain, no gain is really one of the worst pieces of running advice you can get. It implies that you really have to push yourself into pain every time you exercise. And in reality, the opposite is true. Every single training session in a week needs to have its place, and the vast majority of your training actually needs to revolve around you feeling very easy and very comfortable so that we can stimulate the energy systems that are going to make you healthier but also sustain your training in the long term. And even when it comes to your hard training sessions or interval work, we very seldom push ourselves to max. And in fact, your session should be worked out so that you are working at a high intensity, but you can sustain it consistently over the whole course of that training session. And there's very rare times where we're working in zone 5 and 6. In fact, most of your interval work is probably somewhere in the zone 4 range. This is also true of strength training. We want to work hard in the gym, but there really isn't any need for us to work into pain. And if you push yourself too hard in the gym, you might get stronger, but that's also going to detract away from your main sport, which is the running. You're not going to be able to do that properly because you're going to be feeling sore all the time. And so really, when it comes to running and being successful in running, consistency and being able to fulfill your training over long periods of time, avoiding an illness and injury is absolutely going to trump the no pain, no gain every time, because the no pain, no gain is going to lead to injury and or illness.
The next piece of horrible training advice makes me think of a stretch of coastline, where the ebb and flow of tides shape the landscape over time. In your youth, this coastline was robust and resilient, with sand and rocks standing firm against the waves. But as the years pass, the relentless motion of the tides, the natural aging process, affects the coastline. The once sturdy rocks may erode and the sands may shift, reshaping the shore. Similarly, our bodies undergo changes with age. Lean muscle mass decreases, cardiac output may decline, and mitochondrial function goes down as well. This is much like the erosion of the rocks and sand on the beach. Expecting our bodies to endure the same workouts as we did in our 20s is like expecting the rocks and the sand to withstand the constant pounding from the waves. It's unrealistic and ignores the natural processes of time. To maintain our physical shorelines, essentially our bodies, we need to adapt our processes to training. Just as our shorelines are protected by coastal management, we need to protect our bodies by using things like strength training and recovery. Recovery is like replenishing the beach with new sands, allowing our bodies to heal and rejuvenate. Strength training is like the sturdy rocks that fortify our muscles and skeletal structures against the wear and tear of life's tides.
Trends like cold plunges and ice baths have gained a lot of traction online for their supposed benefits in recovery. However, their effect on training adaptation can be misleading. Cold plunges are the latest trend on social media that all influencers are punting at the moment, claiming all sorts of performance benefits. Wrong. When we train, our body breaks down. There are slight damage and micro tears in our muscle fibers. As a result of this, we have this inflammatory response, leading the body to help repair itself and make ourselves stronger. Cold water immersion inhibits that inflammation and in turn inhibits our adaptation. Science has proven that ice baths are good for recovery, but not when you're looking for adaptation. For example, in a multi-day stage race, it would be good to do some ice baths or cold water immersion for recovery between days and between stages. But it's not good to do an ice bath after every single training session when you're in a peak training block looking for adaptation to get fitter and stronger. Stop focusing on the flashy stuff. Get the basics right first. Sleep, nutrition, and importantly, consistency. That should make up 98% of your recovery strategies. The other 2% are just cherries on the top, things like massages, cold water immersion, ice baths, compression garments, etc.
Effective training is not just about pushing harder or faster or following trends blindly. It's about understanding your body's needs, adapting accordingly, and training smart. Dev and I found an interval system in this video that will not kill your running. In fact, I bet it's better than what 99% of runners are using.